Hey, welcome to the Harry Man Show number 10, where drummers just want to be loud. Today I have a special guest, Zachary Lewis. He's coming all the way from Florida. Is that correct, Zachary? Florida, was it?
That's it, man. Florida.
All right. Zachary has toured. He's got a lot of experience playing music, drums. I'm glad to have him on the show today and hear about his stories and experience with the music industry and so forth. Hey, Zach, why don't you say hi and let us know a little about yourself?
How's it going, guys? Yeah, like I said, my name is Zachary Lewis, or Zach. Just call me Zach, man. You know, I've found that usually when my mom or an ex-girlfriend says Zachary, I've usually done something wrong, so it's, you know, I kind of have to duck my head like that then when that happens.
Yeah,
and then when they say the full name, Zachary Andrew Lewis, then you know you royally screwed up.
Yeah, when you have that middle name, it's over.
Yeah, when the middle name hits, you're done. You're done. First off, man, I'd like to tell you thanks, man. You know, the Harry Man Show, it's kind of, I've caught a little bit of grief from some of my buddies about, you know, the name of the podcast, and then they're like, dude, like, you can't grow any facial hair. Like, I guess they're making the exception to the rule with me. I mean, buddy, today I shaved before I went to church and played this morning. That was like the first time in like 2 weeks.
Really?
But you would have been, yeah, dude. I'm a ginger day walker, so you know, like the facial hair thing is out on me. But you know, while I catch grief about that, I also get to tell my friends, look, I don't have the hairy back and things like that. So, and I still have a full head of hair at 42. So, and no gray, knock on wood.
Yeah, you learn to grow with it as you get older, you know.
Yeah, no pun intended, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, man. I'm from Florida, born and raised. Went to school through here. Went to college at the University of Southern Mississippi. Got the joy of studying with Dr. John Wooten, was my percussion professor.
Oh, nice.
Out there. And from there, auditioned for bands. You know, I played through college, played in various bands. I would play one night, I would be playing with a jazz trio. The next night, I would be playing in a cover band that, you know, would play like the fraternity parties and things like that. And then the next time, I'd be playing with an all-original rock band, thinking we were going to, quote-unquote, make it and all of that. And from there, ended up auditioning for a band that got signed, moved to L.A., band got dropped, a lot of money spent that never came to fruition. Spent some time out in L.A., kind of networking, cutting my teeth, kind of getting that real world and actually seeing what it really is like. From there to New York to Nashville, Nashville to Atlanta. And by the time I moved back to Florida, I guess you'd say technology kind of caught up. And I wasn't having to live in one of those major hubs to be able to do recording work. And from there, you know, was doing a lot of touring as a hired gun, if you will. And just from that, was doing that, touring, recording. I had my own original band. In the meantime, we put 2 records out, put a solo EP out under the singer's name. That was just a complete departure from the band. The band was very much in that, I use the term power pop. I think I remember a guy that did a article review on us, basically said it was a cross between the Cars,
oh, nice,
Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and Cheap Trick and the Foo Fighters. So
that's all good stuff.
Bands I love. Yeah, really can't complain about, you know, that comparison by no means.
Well, I listened to it, and it's really good. I actually enjoyed it, to be honest with you.
Thanks, man. I really, really appreciate that. That record that I sent you, the original song that was on there, a guy named Tuck Smith, who was a buddy of mine, he was the lead singer for the Biters, and back in the day when I met him, he was in a punk band called the Heart Attacks, and that's where we ended up getting, you know, becoming friends, and had the opportunity to have him produce the band, produce that EP, and a gentleman named Dan Dixon, who was in a band from Atlanta called the Drop Sonic, which, if you've never heard of them, can't recommend them enough. He's got a project now called Please Please, but it's spelled PLS, and it's just great. It's really, really good stuff. So having the opportunity to have those guys come in and work on it was a really awesome experience. I mean, we did that entire EP in 4 days, from cutting the drums to mix finished product. We got up there and just went to work. I think I cut all the drums for the EP. I want to say it was in like 6 hours.
Mm.
And that was, not having to go back and do like the fix me quantizing and, the drummer in a box sound replacing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it was really cool. I'm really, really fortunate that I came up just on the tail end before Pro Tools kind of took over,
mm-hmm.
and I learned how to record the tape. So when you had that red light on, like you were going for tapes, I mean, you would go back and, punch in a spot here and a spot there, but you really had to have your A game on,
yeah,
and know what you were doing when you sat behind the kit or put, strap your guitar on or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, you had to
so I really, really appreciated having that ability and learning how to record like that. It made for a lot faster process, down the road once Pro Tools came into it.
Yeah, you definitely have to get your 8 hours of sleep and your Wheaties in the morning,
Yeah, totally.
You can't go out partying and all that bad stuff, and you got to really focus for a week straight. I learned to chart my parts and kind of have the diagram and the roadmap of everything, and everybody's charts are different. They have the Nashville, the Nashville charting, which I can decipher it a little bit, but I've been more of the roadmap of like write 8 bars, say this is the verse, and kind of do a little verbal, or worded description of what you're going for and things like that. And it's always been easy for me to read those. I used to call them just my one sheets because I could fit the whole chart onto one front side sheet of paper. So plus, learning and growing up, going through the education process and playing in big bands in college and high school, learning actually how to read a comp chart, which is basically like a piano lead sheet, that really helped me a lot as well. So, there is a very, very bad thing as being a drummer. I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase two-schooled. Oh, yeah, where you just overthink everything.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. It's one of those things where, and a lot of times, the guys that can really, really play, they tend to have like an old school or an over-schooled feel to what they're playing. And it's like, playing the drums for me has always been about playing from the heart and the passion from that, and ultimately the song. I mean, I don't know about how your process was coming up with drumming. For me personally, just like every other kid growing up, like I grew up and like Dave Weckl and Vinny and Gad, and those guys were really like my dudes. And I remember setting up my drum set just like theirs and having, all the splash cymbals and all that kind of stuff. And it's funny, between my freshman year of college and my sophomore year of college, I discovered punk rock, if you will.
Yeah.
And learning that, you don't necessarily have to be this great musician to write great songs. And so it was almost like I went backwards at that point with my playing. Like slowly but surely, I was taking a cymbal off the kit, or I was taking a floor tom off the kit. Where now, my kit now that I use a 4-piece kit, a couple of cymbals and a ride cymbal and a hat, and I'm done. I don't even use a double pedal anymore.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat right now. I use 2 floor toms still, but excuse me, one on the left.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, one on the left and one on the right seems to be the way to go now.
Oh, you do that whole setup.
Yeah.
I've tried that, and I really like how it opens up. And it's kind of funny, like when you put that other instrument over there to the left, it opens up almost like your vocabulary on what the ideas are going to come out and how they're going to, they're going to be executed.
Yeah. The reason why I started doing that is because I wanted to have the 18 on my right side, because I wanted the 4 on the floor, that heavy, like Foo Fighters, like billet. So I didn't want to lose.
Oh yeah.
I didn't want to lose the 16, so I would always put it to my left, or the 14. And then when you do your build-ups, so your crescendos and stuff, you can power up with both sides, and it looks cool, sounds cool. It gives it that dynamic too,
Absolutely. So let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
What got you to start playing the drums? What was that defining moment? Because I've got mine, and that's always something that I want to ask other musicians. Like, what was that moment for you?
Well, I came up. My dad and my older brother Rory, were out. They were both their names were Rory, so they were both drummers. But the defining moment, I was 9 years old, and my dad showed me this video cassette on the VCR. It was the Beatles, "A Hard Day's Night." And
Awesome.
I was sitting there like, I can actually tap to this. I remember it, and my dad gave me a Remo practice pad and taught me how to "Can't Buy Me Love," and I just learned that whole Hard Day's Night album pretty much within that year. And I joined the school band, but that defining moment, I have to give Ringo credit for it.
Absolutely, man. I remember many a debate in college defending Ringo and Charlie Watts on how great of the drummers they were. Because back then you're in college, you're surrounded by a bunch of guys that it's chops, chops, chops.
Mm-hmm.
And they would just completely write those guys off. And to me, it was like, you take a song like Penny Lane,
mm-hmm.
for instance, dude, that's like a hi-hat and a tambourine, and it's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, the guy...
It's perfect.
He doesn't get enough credit, even though he's probably one of the most famous drummers in the world. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Another guy that I don't think gets a lot of credit is Stan Lynch from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
Oh, yeah.
Those guys are huge to me. Huge, huge. That record, Damn the Torpedoes, is just, I think, is quintessential, should be in every musician's catalog. Going back to the Beatles, though, it's pretty funny that you mentioned that. I actually have the line from the song Blackbird, "Take these broken wings and learn to fly." Mm-hmm. I've actually got that tattooed on me.
Oh, really?
And, yeah, man, and, it's kind of funny. If I'm out and about, well, not right now with the pandemic, but if I'm out and about and some chick comes up and is talking with me and she sees the tattoo, you can really gauge their intelligence level when they ask if that's from the Mr. Mister song. So, usually when I was like, yeah, that's where I got it from, just kind of let it on and go.
Yeah, dismiss.
So, a funny thing for me, the defining moment for me, backing up a little bit, I remember wanting to always play the drums. You would go to, parades and things like that. And I'm from a small town, so, the whole Friday Night Lights thing, that's Crestview, which is about 30 minutes north of Destin. So I live pretty much right on the beach for the most part. And I would always see the drum lines and always think, man, that's really cool. That's what I want to do and everything. And so when middle school started coming around, it was, Mom, I really want to play the drums. And my mom's a school teacher, or was. She's retired now after 35 years. Mm-hmm. And she made the deal with me. She said, okay, Dad and I are good with this, but you've got to promise me that you'll take piano for a year before I commit to playing the drums.
Yeah, I didn't do that until I was in my 20s. So, yeah, I should have done that, like you said.
Dude, it was the best thing for me. I ended up playing piano, not just that year, but I ended up playing it all through middle school and taking lessons until I was a sophomore in high school. And then at that point, it just got to where it was just too much, with all the extracurricular activities and stuff. But I didn't realize then how much that was going to set me up with playing mallets and four-mallet marimba and all these things that come along later on in your playing. And, it was always when I would audition for all-county band or for chair position, guys would always be able to play through the quote-unquote the snare drum stuff. But when it came to that mallet stuff, they kind of got lost in the shuffle. And for me, that was kind of what set me apart a little bit, was being able to actually read notes and know where they are on the keyboard. Mm-hmm. So it really, really helped me out. So thanks, Mom, for that one. That defining moment that I wanted to play drums for professionally, and this is what I wanted to do. Back in the day, when MTV actually played videos on TV and things like that, I remember coming home from the beach, and we would always stop at my grandmother's house and order a couple pizzas and kind of chill out before we came home. Well, I remember sneaking into the den where another TV was and putting it on MTV and having it just loud enough that I could hear it, but not where, my mom or grandmother would come in and see me listening and watching these music videos. And I remember seeing the video from Motley Crue's Looks That Kill and seeing Tommy Lee back there just spinning the sticks and just twirling it. And it was like, that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want to do that. I couldn't grow the hair necessarily like that, but, you know, like that was just a really pivotal moment for me. Like I always go back to that, was seeing that and doing that. So, you know, now fast forward to the college, having to defend guys like Charlie Watts and Ringo against guys that were, you know, they were just starting to come into the Weckles and the Gads, and the Virgil Donati was really starting to come on. I'm really showing my age now.
No, I got into them when I was younger too, so I don't think you're too far ahead of me in age.
Yeah, I'm 42.
Yeah,
I'm 42. So
that's not old.
You know,
I'm 33.
You know what, man? It's got its days. It's got its days where, you know, you wake up and you get out of bed and it's like you sound like, you know, a box of Rice Krispies with the snap, crackle, and pop. But I definitely mentally don't feel that age. And I always joke, you know, I still get carded if I go out, which I'm like, thank you. Like before when I was, you know, younger, I would get offended. But now the older I get, the more I look at it as a compliment. And I always joke, you know, through my 20s, I did the typical rock and roll cliche stuff. So I always joke, I'm like, yeah, you know, I pickled myself in my 20s. So I'll be 50 years old and still look like I'm in my 20s or 30s, which I'm fine with now.
Yeah. And not to pull you way back though, but I kind of want to hear more about the differences in culture between LA and the East Coast, New York. You said you were at. Was it
yes.
Was it a hard? Was one of them a harder market or an easier, or was there a lot of variances in that? You know, the who you know kind of ideal.
You know, the thing that I found about the difference between the two, there was a lot of similarities within the playing, like how you would go about in getting gigs and stuff. I found New York to be very cutthroat, whereas LA, you know, LA's got great weather and everything else, and it's got all the culture. But the thing that I found with LA was the disingenuousness of the people, if you will. You know, you always had to kind of step back for a second and ask yourself, hey, is this person wanting to be my friend because they like me as a person, or am I going to be a stepping stone to further their careers? And the thing that I found out with both of them are very, very, I guess you could say, click-oriented. You know, like a lot of the work that I got was because of engineers that happened to be on the gig or on the session, and that's how my name would get thrown into the pot, if you will, to get the work. And the thing that I found with New York was every gig was an audition where you didn't know, and it's like that. I still take that kind of mentality to this day. Like, you never know who's going to be watching you or who's going to be listening and checking things out. New York was very much a cutthroat thing. Like, I learned in New York, don't ever say no to a gig. Because you happen to get the call, but if you said no, that's fine. Like, they're not going to sweat. Like, it's not like the gig's not going to happen. They're going to get somebody, and chances are your name's going to fall lower and lower to that Rolodex, if you will, of players. Another moment, kind of step a little out of this, was in Nashville. A buddy of mine was represented by a really, really large law entertainment firm that at the time was representing Creed, Faith Hill, Slipknot. Just if they were in the Billboard top 10, chances are these guys probably represented them. And the gentleman pulled me into his office, and he said, Zach, he said, you seem to really have your head on your shoulders and, you know, be about business, if you will. And he said, I just want you to look at this because you'll know exactly what the reason behind this was. So I was like, okay, cool. So he opens up this bottom drawer on this huge desk, and he starts pulling out Rolodexes. This was pre-iPhone and iPad era, guys.
Yeah.
He starts pulling out these Rolodexes, and at the front of each Rolodex, it's drummers, keyboard players, bass players, guitar players, singers, like percussion players, and each Rolodex was just filled back to back with players, and it made the takeaway I got from that was learning, like, put your ego outside and realize nobody in a group is inexpendable.
Yeah,
everybody can be replaced. So I just learned to not be that guy, and I think what a lot of people don't understand when it comes to an audition process is you can go in there and you can have the material top to bottom, inside and out, and know the material as if you were the one that maybe originally cut the record or cut the track. But what people don't realize is a part of what goes into that is, am I going to be able to stomach this guy for 6 weeks going down the road on a bus and not get pissed off with him because he doesn't put the toilet seat down, or he never, takes the used coffee out of the coffee maker and things like that. Like there's a lot more that goes into it than just being, can I play? Yeah,
it's not to sound cliche, but it is kind of a marriage to somebody, a short-term marriage.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And, being that guy that's able to get along with other musicians and doesn't wear his ego on his chest and walk around with it, there's a big, big difference between being confident as a musician and being cocky as a musician. And the cocky guys, they don't get the work, or I should take that back. And nowadays, that's your Instagram social media drummers, which is just a whole nother conversation we'll have in a little bit.
Yeah, but I understand what you're saying, but I'll go ahead and finish that, though, but I have a good point I want to bring up to you.
No, I'm finished. I want to hear what you got to say.
So I came up in California, and I moved to Phoenix here when I was about 18 years old. Now with this whole current situation, and you were just talking about social media and the way technology is, microphones are better, cameras are better. Do you see the demand for big city music scene like just kind of disappearing overnight? Or do you see like that coming back, or everyone's just going to have their own home studio going forward? You know what I mean? And everyone's going to network on a different level now. I mean, that's kind of what I fear, but I'm excited about at the same time.
I'm with you on that, and I'm like that on a lot of the current things, if you will, with the streaming and things like that. I think the days of the big $3,000 a day studios are slowly going to go by the wayside because, quite frankly, labels don't have the budget and the money to throw out like they used to. I had a buddy of mine that his last band's record, which was on a major, and his budget for the record and the first music video was $30,000. That's all he got to get the record recorded, mixed, mastered, done, plus whatever money was left over, that's what went towards the first music video. Technology's been a blessing and a curse. Like I was saying before, being able to come back to Florida and work out of a studio in Destin was really a blessing because people could email you the files and then you dump them down to your hard drive, go to the studio, pop them in, boom, you're ready to go. So the things like that, I think, are great. Well, I think the problem with it too is that people and musicians and young drummers, musicians, period, I think they're putting too much of an emphasis on the technology.
Yeah.
And on the social media.
Yeah, because you could fix everything,
Right. Like I can't tell you how many times I've done session work here in the past, recent, where it's been like I would go in and I would chart a song out and they had me play like 8 bars and they cut and paste me for a verse. Then they had me play a couple drum fills for them to choose from. Then play 8 bars like this for a chorus. Okay, now ride the crash cymbal here. So they're taking and they're splicing and cutting and pasting, and next thing you know, they've got an entire drum track. And some ways, I think that's kind of cool in some cases, but then in other cases, I think you tend to lose that magic and things become sterile.
Yeah, I agree with that.
The thing that I've found with the social media drumming is, if you look at these guys, they've got all these followers, but they don't have a gig.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that's because they haven't put that time in to get in a garage or get in a rehearsal space and interact with other musicians. Anybody that's a musician can go on YouTube or whatever, find a track that's a drumless track of play along and record themselves playing along to that and then post that and be done with it. And I think there's just too much put on hyping yourself as an individual, but not in a band setting. And again, now it's getting down to the way people are tuning their drums. They sound god awful now. It's like, it's like a pitched pillow, for lack of a better way of saying it.
Yeah.
It's dude, it's horrible.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
You definitely lose that feel. And like I said, I'm venturing a little bit more into that myself. I mean, I wish I would do a little bit more of the recording, but like you were saying, I would just show up in the studio with my drums. The sound guy would mic them. Then I'd lay my stuff out and, get out of there. But venturing into doing the YouTube videos myself, there's a lot to it, but I want to do it the right way. I don't want it to sound.
Yeah, and I think there are definite ways to go about it. I still take lessons to this day. I've been playing for 33 years, 22 of it I've been playing professionally, thank the good Lord. But even still, I still take lessons to this day. And, I think what I'm seeing with these guys is that it's just all about the flash, and it's all about,
we can catch on fire.
Putting it out there. And, and it's dude, that's all cool and stuff, but, it's kind of funny. One of the first things that I do with my drum set kids, and, I'll go on and tell you now, I don't call my students like they're my kids.
Mm-hmm.
And the first things that I'll do with my kids is I'll put two different tracks on. I'll either put Billie Jean by Michael Jackson on, or I'll put Back in Black by AC/DC on. And they'll listen to them. They'll just kind of look at me like, dude, are you serious? This is kid stuff. And it's okay, hot shot, play it. Then all of a sudden, it's you can see the gerbil doing double time on the wheel in their heads and the light coming on. They're realizing, oh, wait, it's not just playing parts. There's this attitude and this swagger to the way that you play this stuff. And I don't hear that with a lot of the Instagram drummers, as I call them. And plus there's certain learning material, formats that are out there. I won't say. There's one that's a very popular one that the owners actually got me blocked. I called him out on his stuff. But I'll watch some of those things, and the takeaway is really good when they have someone like a Todd Zuckerman, or they'll have someone like a Keith Carlock on there, where they have those master classes, if you will. There's some takeaway from those. But then, when their staff gets on there, and their staff is just, pardon my language, just a bunch of half-ass Instagram cover drummers. And it's I'm sorry. There is no 10 days to faster hands or 10 days to faster feet.
Yeah.
There is no magical format for that, and as one of my teachers says, 10 days to becoming unemployable.
Yeah. And to be honest with you, I'm not even as fast as I used to be when I was younger, and I'm okay with that. You know what I mean?
You know what, man? I'm learning that too. I'm not as fast as what I was, and I'm completely fine with that, because I can sit back with a band and play and look out into a crowd of people, and I see people bobbing their heads and tapping their feet, and I'm looking over, and my bass player's got this huge grin on his face, and it's you know what? I'm doing my job, and I'm doing it very, very well. I don't want to put it out there that I'm just anti-chops guy, this anti-fast guy, because that's not.
No, that's not what I'm trying to get you to say. I just mean when I first started playing double bass, I was all Joey Jordison, just go fast, fast, fast. But now, I can actually accent and do double string. What I mean? Like, I'd rather be better at that, like Thomas Lang, than sit there and just run through everything,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as a musician and as a drummer, since this is a drumming podcast, I think it's very, very, very important to have your chops and have those in order, because for us as drummers, we don't have the luxury of having pitches and things like that and scales and stuff like that to be able to create music with. We have rhythm and we have dynamic.
Yeah.
Well, we also have the rudiments, which, all of my students, by the time when they go into high school, all of my kids know all 12 major scales, and they also all know all 40 rudiments. Like, it's just, that's how it's going to be.
Yeah.
But talking about chops, chops is our way to express ourselves, and it's our vocabulary. But what separates the men's from the boys with this is knowing when to use those, and more importantly, when not to use those. It's like, you ever heard somebody talk and they use this word where it's the correct word, but clearly they've just learned the meaning of this big fancy word, so they're trying to interject it everywhere they can in a conversation?
Yeah, I'm guilty of that sometimes.
Well, we all are. We all are.
Yeah.
But like I tell my kids, it's like, okay, when it comes to chops, you're able to have more of a conversation and write like a paper, like a term paper for English, when you have a bigger vocabulary.
Yeah.
So I think it's imperative that we all learn those things. But I think where the maturity part kicks into that is knowing when not to use those words. Sometimes just saying something is better than using some 30, 11, 12 syllable word to get the same point across.
Yeah.
It's about space.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And, chops don't always sell, unless you're a live drummer. But as far as recording, you kind of want to get to the point.
But you know what, man? I'm going to say this, though, from a live standpoint. I can confidently say I've never gotten a gig or I've never gotten a tour for how fast my hands are and how awesome my chops are. I've gotten work for how I make the song feel and how comfortable I make the band feel and how comfortable I make the artist feel, so they're not sitting there worrying about tempos and things like that. They can concentrate on doing their part to create a show for the audience or for the listener if it's a recording session. So, I really I pride myself on being able to say I'm a song drummer.
That's good. Yeah, that's excellent. Just a couple more questions about LA. I mean, we were talking about how to survive in LA, and I'm not trying to get on the political side of things, but the cost of living is so high there now that I don't see it be worthwhile for someone to try to, take the chance to go to LA and make it big, So I see that changing.
It's really not, man. It's really, really not. I was very fortunate when I was living in those cities that I was living on on the record label's dime. Because there's no way I could have afforded a $6,000 a month rent for an apartment or a house or anything like that. So I was very fortunate that I was able to get out into these markets the way that I was, whether it was with a band that was signed or an artist or somebody that had the financial backing to cover living expenses and things like that. That's where the technology, I think, is great, because you don't have to. You just have to be able to have good material, great songs, and be able to get them out there. And you don't have to be in these major markets anymore to quote unquote make it. And, to be honest with you, man, what is the definition of making it anyways?
That's what I try to question all the time now,
For me, it's greatly changed from when I was a 23-year-old snot-nosed little hotshot kid versus being a 42-year-old adult. Well, I say adult. Back then, I wanted to be the quote-unquote rock star and all of those things. And now it's like, you know what, man? Making it is, I make a great living playing music and teaching, and there's money in the bank. I'm not living paycheck to paycheck. My daughter's college is set up. Like I've been able to like set a retirement up for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like those kind of things, that's making it.
Yeah, I would
being
agree with
able
that.
to say that you're doing that, and but first and foremost, man, being happy.
Yeah.
Being happy. You know, it's kind of funny. Within the last 10 years, I've really learned that the definition of happiness is not necessarily defined by how many zeros are in your bank account.
Yeah, or followers, or etc.
Yeah, or followers, you know, which all those guys, you know, most of these social media drummers, it's like you're putting this half-ass thing up there, and you're getting all these compliments and accolades. They're just empty, you know, good attaboys. And it's like, why?
Yeah.
You know, like, I'm sorry to tell you, but, you know, Shakira, music director, is not going to be looking for a drummer on Instagram that's got the most social media followers.
No, he wants history and a resume and etc. You know, press package.
Absolutely, and those things I think are really important to have.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've got one of my students right now that's going to be a senior this coming year, and he's looking to go to college, but the end result is he wants to be a professional musician. He, you know, which scares the hell out of me when he says, "Zach, I want to have the career that you've had." Because then I look back for me, I'm like, "Oh, buddy, are you sure about that?" So I feel like for me, as his, you know, as a teacher or a mentor, if you will, it's like I feel this responsibility to be able to keep him from making some of the mistakes that maybe I made coming up and setting himself up for these things. But I told him, I said, buddy, like Nashville is where you need to go. Like if there's a city where I think being a viable musician is still something that's attainable,
mm-hmm.
it's Nashville. It really is. Even though Nashville slowly but surely is becoming what I call the South Los Angeles.
Oh wow!
And I don't mean that in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like every bartender or waiter that you run into when you're in Nashville, they're all musicians and aspiring musicians. And like in LA, everybody's an actor or an actress.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, and I see some of the genuineness, if you will, going away from that city. So for me, to me personally, like I like back what you're saying to answer the question, but we took the very long detour around it. I'm going to have to agree with you. Like I don't see it being a necessary thing to have to live in one of these major markets anymore to be a successful musician.
Yeah, I agree.
It's going to put you out in front of. Now, as far as industry folks are concerned, you're going to have more of a chance of being put out in front of those people, yes, just because that's where the businesses are based. But you don't necessarily have to go that route to get your music out anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And not to skew you off subject, but what kit are you playing right now?
Right now, I've got 5 different drum kits.
Mm-hmm.
My main drum kit that I'm gigging with right now is a Pearl Master Series maple kit.
Oh, nice.
Plain and simple.
Nice.
13, 16, 18 on the toms, a 24-inch kick, and then a Ludwig Black Beauty 6.5 by 14 is my main. That's my go-to drum. I've got, like I said, you know, listening to some of these past podcasts that you've had, and people are talking about like their toy collections, or they're talking about, you know, motorcycles and things like that. It's like, I guess if I've got a hobby, it's collecting drum gear and collecting like vintage, you know, snare drums and things like that. You know, I've got 27 snare drums. I've got 3 vaults full of cymbals. Oh,
nice.
So I collect a lot of gear, and it's all nice and flight cased up. But my main gigging kit is a Pearl Masters kit. Nothing boutique or anything like that. Something that you could walk into any Guitar Center or any reputable drum shop and pick up, and they're going to have something like that. I do have I've got a mid-60s Gretsch kit that will never leave my house. It's set up. It's a little jazz kit, a little 12 and a 14 and an 18-inch bass drum. and I've got a set of early '60s K Zildjian cymbals.
Nice.
To offset it, but before Pawn Stars and all that kind of stuff came along, I was in a pawn shop in Cincinnati, and I got that kit for like $250.
Oh, nice.
It was just a simple case of the guy just did not know what he had. He
Well,
just looked at it. I was just an old ratty set of drums.
I think smartphones made everyone think they were a millionaire. You know what I mean? Because they would just get on their phone and like, oh, it's selling for this on eBay. You know what I mean? Like, and that kind of killed that.
Yeah, it's made it hard for guys like you or me that like to find that kind of stuff. What kind of kit are you playing? I have to ask.
Right now I'm playing a Lubbock Classic Maple. It's very similar size to what you have.
Nothing wrong with that.
13, 16, 18, 24. It's a 24 by 14. But as far as kits, I don't mean to say this in a bragging way, but I think about 50 drum sets right now.
Very cool.
Yeah, I've got everything.
You're making me feel better about myself, so I appreciate that.
Yeah, and I don't like say that often, but I got a pro reference. I'm going to start playing next there. I got quite a few. I got a Gretsch jazz kit, just like you were saying. As far as snares, I have a lot of nice stuff and some stuff medium grade stuff, but I probably have close to about 100 snares in there right now.
You're making me feel so much better about myself, and I really, really appreciate that. I'm on the hunt for, and this is going to sound really funny to say, but I am on the hunt for a Yamaha recording custom kit, but it's got to be a early to mid 90s era kit.
So you mean like the Carter Briefbeard style?
The ones where they were still making the recording customs the way they did, but then they added that Yes mounting system to it. And there's that sweet spot area of the years that they made them, and I'm on the hunt trying to find one of those. Yeah, I'm not a big.
I've never been a big Yamaha guy, but I like to venture into maybe the Absolute Maple one these days. But I'm just not in need right now. But yes,
I've got a Yamaha Dave Weckl snare drum that I've had for over 20 years.
Oh, nice.
And man, I'm gonna tell you something. That drum, there's something magic about that drum. Like, for whatever reason, it doesn't translate live very well. I've always been more of a brass guy when it comes to live playing. But, man, when I go into a session, and it's got to be the right session, obviously, for it. But there's just something about that drum. It sings. It hits in that right spot and those right frequencies. I've never been a huge Yamaha guy either, but for some reason, like, that era of Yamaha drums is like, if I'm gonna get one, that's what it's gonna be. I had an endorsement deal back in the late 2000s with CNC drums, and they were great. Loved them. But I had to start thinking about things from a backline standpoint. Is some of these boutique companies, that's all well and good, but if you go do a European tour, what's the chances of them having that kind of kit over there waiting on you?
No.
Then from the other standpoint, a company like Drum Workshop, when you get into their ultra high-end stuff, it's great, but at the same time, DW for me has gotten to where it's a very sterile sounding drum. Like, when you hear a drum on the radio, it's a DW set of drums. And I like for the drums to kind of have their own personality behind them. It kind of changes the way that you're going to play and the way you're going to approach the instrument when it's got its own kind of quirkiness and personality to it.
I was the DW guy for a long time. I think I got 5 or 6 of them up there, and that was like my crown jewels at the time. But I've gone back to Lubbock. I think you always go back to where it started, and these Lubbock drums I'm playing now, they're just perfect. It would be better, but when I play these, I actually feel like and I'm not bashing DW. I love my DWs.
No.
I think. Go ahead.
That's kind of the thing for me with Pearl, for instance. Like, you go back to what you're familiar with. And my first quote unquote nice drum kit, my mom and dad made me the deal one summer that however much money I saved over the summer, they would match. And I was able to get back then, I got a World Series Pearl drum kit, and for whatever reason, man, like I've always just gone back to that. Like it's like I know what I'm getting
Mm-hmm.
when I play one of those kits. Now, just like with every other manufacturer, their high-end stuff's great, and a lot of these companies, like mid-level or their low-end stuff, is junk. That's we're going to say junk.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yeah, there's not a thing wrong with Ludwig's at all. At all.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm about to start going to cymbal hunting because I need like that set. I want to have that set that's like my home set. But I have a whole bunch of cymbals I'm not afraid to break right now. But I haven't broken a cymbal in like 5-7 years now. And maybe that's just
I haven't broke a cymbal in about 8 years.
Yeah, it's a discipline thing that comes over time.
It does, yeah. And a band that I was with and was touring, it was just like, it was very much a volume thing. And I remember I was using at one point, like super thin, like 20-inch A custom ride cymbals for crash cymbals.
Nice.
Because I would go into I would buy their Z series and, I'd end up breaking them after a week's worth of shows.
Yeah, the thicker the cymbal, I've learned, the easier it breaks, and it's a big misconception on that. The thinner the cymbal, the more
very much is.
The resilient it is, the thinner it is, because it's not taking.
Yeah, so now I play Ks. I play Ks and K customs, and it's a lot of it's. I've learned how to properly hit the cymbals. I can still thump a cymbal really hard, but I know how to properly do it, I guess you could say.
Yeah, no, I completely understand. I even catch myself when I'm practicing by myself going, oh, man, don't do that again. You know what I mean?
Right.
But
right.
Not to skew back over, but as a musician going in or someone that's been in it and want to go back, what would be your best advice, putting yourself out there, and what tactics would you take? And, who would you network with? And not calling out for names or anything like that, but just what are good steps that you would put out there?
I would say from the networking standpoint, make friends with everybody.
Yeah.
Make friends with everybody, because you never know that guy that you're having a beer or a shot with, if you drink, that guy could be a second or third engineer, but guess what? This time next year, he's going to be a first engineer that's going to end up being a producer, and so on and so forth. So I say network with everybody. Another thing that people don't think about is, as a drummer, go to these like songwriter roundtables or like the open mic songwriter nights where the guys are getting up and just an acoustic guitar and them and playing their songs. Just get out there and network with that. Go into it not so much with the attitude of how is this person going to help me, just genuinely go into it, genuinely wanting to befriend everybody, because I've had people in the past that would text me just out of the blue, and they would just cut right to the chase. So-and-so gave me your number for gigs, and it's like, whoa, pump the brakes, buddy. Like, I don't know you. I don't know how you are as a person, and I don't know you as a musician or as a player. Like, the last thing that I'm going to do is put my name out for a guy like I don't know personally at all. Like, even to this day, here locally, I've got my guys that I call that if I need a sub, but it's also those guys that I know, number one, they're going to go into it with the attitude of making everybody else feel comfortable. They're going to go into it and not make it a quote-unquote about me type trip. And they're not going to go into it trying to poach my gig.
Yeah.
They're going to go into it like I'm helping out a buddy of mine who is sick or whatever the case may be. And, I just appreciate the opportunity to be able to play. And they're going to get their own networking from that, and who knows what's going to lead from that. But I think there's really, I wouldn't say go after a certain group of people. Like, go into it and talk with everybody that you can and be friends with everybody. First and foremost, you got to be a good dude.
Yeah.
you got to be a good dude, first off. You know, people, if they've seen me play,
Mm-hmm.
or if they've seen friends of mine play, they know we can play.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like, that box is already checked. But then it goes to, okay, yeah, let's hire Zach. You know, he's going to come in and he's going to get the work done and do everything, and we're going to end up with a great end result. But you know what? We're also going to get a few laughs out of it, and it's going to be a very light and upbeat kind of atmosphere
Mm-hmm.
because he's not coming into it, you know, wearing this ego and wearing this big neon sign across his chest saying who he is. He's going to go into it and just have fun.
Yeah, karma's a real thing, man.
It really, dude. It really, really is.
Not to interrupt you, but I've been on both sides of that thing, and it stings. And it can help you out at the same time a little bit.
Absolutely, it most definitely can. You know, case in point, I've got when I was living in Atlanta, I was playing and doing just in my rehearsal space, just playing along to records. Really wasn't like doing anything. Just kind of wanted to get in and blow some steam off.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, the door to my rehearsal space opens up, and there's Chris Robinson from the Black Crowes standing there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, hey, what's up? You know, he's like, man, I just want to tell you sound great. I'm like, oh, cool, appreciate it, man.
Yeah.
You know, and then talking with some friends of mine, and us ended up having this mutual guy that was basically the best guitar player in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Had the look, had everything, could not get a gig to save his life because of his ego and because of the attitude. Nobody would hire him, and this guy was an amazing
mm-hmm.
guitar player. Like I said, like just could do whatever you put in front of him. He could make it fit and not be like a rock guy trying to sound like an R&B guy. He fit seamlessly into everything that he could do, but because of his attitude. And, you know, he had some personal things that he kind of let get in the way of those opportunities too. But yeah, just seeing those things happen, it was just like, wow. The takeaway from that is don't be that guy.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, just be a good person and good things will come. Simple as that.
Yeah, you know, that's one of the things with teaching, you know, that I love so much is being able to, I'm not just teaching my kids, you know, random cues and flam drags and,
mm-hmm.
you know, playing time on working out of the stick control book or the Ted Reed book.
Nice.
You know, we're talking about what you and I are talking about, just not being so cocky and being confident, absolutely. Because when you're confident, it comes across with the way that you hit your drums.
Yeah.
But just giving off some of my personal experience and my real life experience that I've had, being able to share it with my kids that they don't make those mistakes and they don't have some of the hardships that are 100% avoidable just based off of their character and how they are as a person.
Yeah, that's great advice. But going into the future, what do you have in the works? Are you just teaching full time, or are you playing with any bands? I know you said you were performing with your church earlier today, but any future projects we should look out for?
You know, it's kind of funny with the current state of things.
Mm-hmm.
I went from having a completely full calendar that was booked through the end of November, and I was going to be able to take the holidays off, and had a 5-week fall tour with the country artist she had just signed. Was supposed to cut her record in Nashville back in May, but obviously with the pandemic, that pretty much put everything on pause. So I went from a completely full calendar of recording and live work to a very empty calendar, and that was a scary thing. And I just turned around and was just like, okay. After about 2 weeks of picking up the phone or reading the text message that this gig's canceled, this is rescheduled,
mm-hmm.
You know, kind of got a little disheartened, if you will. I mean, it's human nature.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been funny because with all of this happening, I've found that I'm doing a lot more teaching. And, you know, that's where things are starting to lead. I've got about 20, my private studio is about 20 to 25 kids.
Oh, nice.
That I teach. So I do that weekly. I also teach at one of the local middle schools here. I'm able to teach their beginner band kids all the way through their 8th graders. I just started last week. I'm now the percussion instructor coordinator for a local high school in their drumline and percussion department.
Oh, nice.
And I also have another school. So I'm teaching with 2 high schools and a middle school and teaching my private stuff as well. It's kind of scary right now. Live music, man, I don't know really what's in the cards for it. Obviously, I'm going to play, and I'm going to always take the gig when they present themselves. I play with 2 local bands, cover bands. One's more like a Motown Stax record type gig, and then the other one is more of a pop gig, and that does everything from like 70s female-fronted stuff through the 80s to current. So it's like both of them are quote-unquote pocket gigs, but they're both approached very differently.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'll always work with my band, but we went from having full calendars to nothing. And one of the things with living down here on the beach is live work is very seasonal, if you will. It falls right in line with the tourism seasoning. So from about the first week of March through the end of November, that's when it's just busy, and gigs are left and right. And then come the fall, the December through February, it's pretty much a ghost town.
Yeah.
So, obviously, like I said, with things happening that have happened, that kind of dried it up. But it's kind of a scary thing too, because do you really want to put yourself in some of these positions for these places to make yourself susceptible to catch what's going around? Yeah. And you really have to kind of take a step back and think about it.
Yeah, I definitely feel that anxiety on, not playing, but at the same time, that's what influenced me to start this podcast. So there's always a glimmer of hope. I'm new to this, and I know everyone and their cousin's starting a podcast, but, I still think this is a good way to, meet people, learn their stories. And, I could see if I just if I keep doing this, it might put me in some better opportunities later when everything opens back up,
Absolutely. That's been the thing for me. It was like, if somebody's spiritual, they may get this, what I'm going to say, but, I have to kind of look at it from the standpoint as the big guy upstairs kind of put the teaching thing back into the forefront for me to maybe keep me from being in some of these environments where I could, put myself at risk. And so trying to keep a positive mental attitude. I don't know if you know from the bad brains and the hardcore days, the PMA. I'm really big about having the PMA and trying to keep that, and always, as hard as it is, man, especially in the times we're living in, trying to find the good in situations. Like I've found, like, you live a lot better life, and you're always going to be in a lot better headspace if you try to focus on the positive things, like what you're saying, for instance, okay, not maybe necessarily gigging or recording as much, but I'm going to do this podcast, and I'm going to venture out into other things. As a working musician, that's one thing that I've always done, was you've got to have a lot of irons in the fire that are hot. And so for me, it was, I was doing live work, local work. I was doing session work. I was doing my teaching thing. I was doing the consulting thing and talking with, bands and programs, just trying to keep different avenues to keep going. So if in this case, for instance, the playing has come to a halt, man, I'm going to tell you straight up, the last live gig that I played out was March 14th.
Oh, wow.
March 14th, everything came to a screeching halt at that point. And it was a very weird thing, buddy, to see happen. It was like almost in like slow motion. I was talking when all this stuff started happening. Have you seen the movie World War Z?
Oh, yeah, a long time ago, yeah.
Man, the open, minus the zombies, obviously. But I think we may have had a better deal if we'd have gotten that hand. But then again, it is only August, so who knows what's going to be in store for September or October.
Yeah, I'm waiting for those UFOs.
But, right. But the opening scene with how everything just kind of started, and it was starting very far away, and you're hearing all these kind of whispers and rumblings of things, and the next thing you know, it's right here in our face. That's the best description that I've got for all of this. I was hearing friends of mine talk about it, and next thing I know, like, it's affecting me on a local level. I've got a very dear friend of mine, Tuck Smith. He's got somebody for you guys to keep an ear out for, Tuck Smith and the Restless Heart.
Mm-hmm.
He's got a solo record that's coming out. That's going to be coming out. That's going to be a banger. He had the gentleman that produced American Idiot from Green Day, as well as The Black Parade by My Chemical Romance. He had him produce it. He had Vinny Colaiuta play the drums on it.
Oh, really?
And yeah, dude, it's a no nonsense, just a rock and roll record. He was slated to have his record come out in June. And here's the kicker on top of all that. He had the opening slot on the Motley Crue big stadium tour. He was going to be going up before Joan Jett and the Blackhearts. He had that spot the full 2 months. Well, guess what? His entire plan and their plan of action from management is pretty much on pause. So he's having to sit for a year.
Jesus.
On a finished record, on a tour, and everything else. And, I've got friends of mine that, drum techs and hired guys that, everybody's been affected by it. I've got a buddy of mine now that's started a window washing business.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I've been very, very lucky that I'm still getting to teach and have that aspect and that iron, if you will, still hot and going for me. I'm not disillusioned. I know that I'm not getting any younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm finding myself eventually, I see myself transitioned. I'm not talking here in the next 6 months or a year, by no means. But I do see myself transitioning more to the teaching side of things, because I really, really love seeing that and doing that. I almost love doing that as much as I do sitting behind a kit and playing a gig. I really love that. And
while we're on that note, I when I was growing up, I always thought, I have to do this by 30, blah blah blah. I just don't think age matters anymore. I think it's how you carry yourself, as we were talking about earlier. How you feel, how you look, what you can do. You know what I mean? But I used to be all freaked out. That number 30 would scare the crap out of me. Now I'm not even stressing it anymore.
When I turned 40, I thought I was going to have more of a freak out than I did, but I really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
I really didn't. It's funny. I feel better at 42 than I did at 32.
Mm-hmm.
Just way better. My lifestyle's changed and everything as well. I just, I don't see myself being that guy in his late 50s or 60s still schlepping a kit to a local gig on a Friday night. I don't see that. But from the teaching side of it, I always taught throughout my career of playing. I've always taught, not to the magnitude that I'm doing now. And I did have to take about a year and a half off from teaching, just because my touring schedule with my original band just got to the point where it just wasn't fair to my kids to, be so inconsistent with when I was going to be able to be there for them. So I did take some time away from it. And in 2018, I decided that I was going to stop touring full time and try to stay home more. I'm a single dad of a 13-year-old going on 20 little girl. And she's my world.
Nice.
She's grown up and seen daddy, and she gets it, this is what daddy does. And I really want to be here for these times. But, her being a teenager, it's way different from when you and I were teenagers.
Yeah.
And I just felt that she needs her daddy home more so than me going out and doing a 4-week tour. And I was in my local music store and talking with the owner, who is a hell of a big band drummer. And he was like, so is it true what I've heard? Like, you're coming off the road full time? I was like, yeah. He's like, well, what you going to do? I said, I'm not 100% sure. I said, fortunately, financially, I'm okay where I can take time to kind of figure it out. And, dude, if anybody's ever given me the riot act and read it to me, it was him. He said, you need to be teaching. He was just like, Zach, it's a damn disgrace that you do not pass on all of this experience that you have to the next generation. Mm-hmm. And it really, it really struck a chord with me, like, I really feel like it's our responsibility to pass on this gift that we've got mm-hmm. to the next generation of players. And not everybody is a teacher, like not every drummer that picks up a pair of sticks can properly explain how to do, and like I tell my kids, the what's and the whys. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like, fortunately, like I said, with my mom, growing up and having my mom as a teacher and growing up in that environment, it really helped me to learn how to explain things to my kids. And I'm really, really passionate about that and teaching my kids. And I want to teach great musicians. Like, I don't want to be, we've all seen those teachers, or we may have had them in the past, that basically say, here, play this beat. Okay, now play it back to me. And, like, you're not learning anything mm-hmm. from that.
And while I got you on that subject, are you teaching in person, or are you doing virtually, just online, or how does that work for you right now?
I'm doing both. Back when everything happened, back in March, mm-hmm. I went to doing the virtual teaching, mm-hmm. and I was teaching via Zoom, Skype, FaceTime. I was going every avenue with that. I was teaching virtually, and back at the beginning of June, I started teaching, in person. Now, I'm obviously taking all the precautions. I wear a mask. My kids wear a mask. We sanitize our hands before each lesson and after the lesson, and it's to give my parents peace of mind to know that I'm being as proactive as I can mm-hmm. with everything going on. So I've done both. I will say this, that if you've never done the virtual teaching, mm-hmm. that's a whole other ball of wax versus the one-on-one teaching.
Yeah, I haven't done that.
My lessons are virtual, and I've always done it. Like I said, being from the student side of it is one thing, but trying to teach virtual, like, that's a whole other thing, because I'm very hands-on. Like, if I see one of my kids not necessarily holding the sticks the right way, or maybe they're using too much arm, or they've got a death grip on their fulcrum, like, I want to reach over and kind of like loosen the hands a little bit and let them see that, or something as simple as like playing along with them to a Charlie Wilcoxon solo, like set the metronome and both of you guys play it. Like, not being able to do that in a virtual setting, that's tough, man. That's really, really tough. So obviously, yes, I very much more prefer the one-on-one in-person, option, but I'm a lot more comfortable doing the virtual teaching now than what I was when I started, back in March.
Yeah. And where can potential students find you on social media or YouTube channels that you'd like to plug right now?
I do not have a YouTube channel. I've got my Facebook page.
Okay. I'll share that for
you. You can follow me on that. You can follow me on Instagram. I think my Instagram is Zachary A. Lewis. Pretty simple. I've always kind of chuckled to myself when somebody's got some weird, screen name, and it's like trying to put the correlation. Fortunately for me, I was able to just get Zachary A. Lewis.
Nice.
For Instagram. Mm-hmm. So they can follow me on that. Find me on Facebook, parents. They can find me on Twitter. Although Twitter's where I get a little bit more unfiltered with some of my remarks about things.
Yeah.
So I try to keep my kids off of Twitter.
It's a little bit of the Wild West over there.
Yeah, it is. You may find me making a comment about number 45 and some of the remarks he's said or done. So, or the local drum charlatan that runs Drummy No. You may find me calling him out on a few things over on that side of things.
Yeah, no worries, man. You do what you gotta do. But we're gonna wrap it up here. I just want to say thank you very much for coming on. I know we met through social media, going back and forth, but I've definitely learned a lot in the last hour about that. A little bit about both scenes, and it was good to hear from you and your experiences. So I really want to say thank you there.
Dustin, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I really appreciate that and giving me a platform, if you will, to kind of say some of my thoughts on things. If I could say anything to anybody right now, it's don't stop learning. Keep a positive attitude. We're going to get through all of this, and if you're wanting to learn this instrument, don't take the shortcuts. There are no 10 days. There are no, magic pill. Find a reputable teacher in your area, and don't be afraid to start with the basics and the fundamentals. And first, above all that, if playing music and hitting a drum doesn't put a smile on your face, find something else, man. Because it's, to this day, 33 years later, whenever I got a pair of sticks in my hand, like, everything else goes away. Like, I have a smile on my face, and it reminds me of why I wanted to start doing this in the first place. So take those things to heart, and Dustin, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, man.
Yeah, no problem. Just to plug myself a little bit, if you guys are listening, please share. We're on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, Facebook. It's simply just the Harry Man Show, easy to find. You guys all have a good day, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.